Well, we haven't had enough of CERN yet. CERN, I know you're an outdoorsman, cycling and climbing mountains and things like that. And so you could have suffered in your lifetime from overexposure. Um, so we're hoping that doesn't happen on this indoor sport of YouTubing.
Oh, I thought you were getting at, a reason for the way that I am. But yes, lack of oxygen may explain it.
Anything is possible. Anything is
Yes.
possible. We were talking about the fact that the crew here on the Randy Kirk YouTube show have all these things in common, and I just realized there's another thing that most of you have in common, and that is sparse hair.
Yeah.
Sparse hair, yeah.
I'm guessing it's got something to do with the brain power that's inside our skulls.
Probably
Yeah.
you've all outgrown your hair is what has happened.
Well, or it's taking all the energy that would go into growing hair and repurposing it for something else.
That has to be it. That has to be it. But Scott, since you're always picking on Scott, we did in the green room, we did show some amazement at his hair.
Yes, Scott's hair is quite unique.
Yes.
Back to the Future comes to mind.
He's even said as much about himself.
Yes. And I'm jealous. Frankly, I'm jealous. So, yeah.
All right. Well, all right. We're going to dig into FSD and the possibility of licensing. And that's certainly interesting to everybody. It's even interesting to Dan Ives. He brings it up all the time. I think it's there's somebody else who brings it up all the time. I'm forgetting who it is, but there's a couple of people that's kind of one of their focuses. They love the idea of Tesla inside. So
I think Jeff Lutz has talked about it quite a
I
bit.
think Jeff might be the other one I'm thinking of. Yes, yes.
Certainly not Scott.
Scott is
No.
more interested in, I think, something to do with robots.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I see that as being a slightly bigger potential than FSD. Well, of course, now FSD, according to Elon Musk, is the power plant for the robots also.
Yeah.
So licensing FSD for other people's robots would also be a possibility. Are you going to cover that in this slideshow?
No, I'm not. That's going to take a bit more
A
thinking.
future opportunity.
That's right.
All
Another spreadsheet.
right. Well, dig on in.
Well, yeah, so let's talk about FSD. And I think we've seen some pretty amazing videos over the past few weeks of people driving version 12 and the different things it can do. Scott himself has actually put out some great videos.
Yes.
So he's contributing to that. Yeah, thank you, Scott. But one of the things that came up yesterday was the idea, well, not for the first time, but Elon mentioned it again,
Yes.
about the idea of licensing FSD to other car companies.
Mm-hmm.
And so first of all, a whole Mars catalog said that in the future, every car will be self-driving and electric. Number two, every car Tesla makes is self-driving and electric, and they're the world leader in EV sales. Okay. And three, as robot cars eat the auto market, Tesla will be the overwhelming benefactor.
Right.
And Elon chimed in and said, and we will license the tech to other car companies.
Yes.
Now, I took this to mean that they will license it to other car companies that are making EVs,
Mm-hmm.
maybe hybrids,
Mm-hmm.
but not ICE, not internal combustion vehicles. And the reason I think that is that goes against Tesla's mission. Yes, it would make all vehicles safer, and that's great. I think that's part of the mission. But the mission to accelerate, the advent of sustainable energy, the transition to sustainable energy, that's more embodied in EVs than it is in ICE, clearly. So I don't know that Tesla wants to make ICE vehicles more competitive versus EVs. I think you want to put FSD on an EV and make that the premium product and have people want that.
Yeah.
So
So
if you're going to get FSD, you have to buy an EV to get it.
I'm trying to imagine that conversation. So Ford calls, gets on an airplane, drops by, comes in. Hey, Elon, we want to license FSD. Everybody thinks Ford's going to be first. So we want to license FSD for our electric cars. Oh, by the way, I mean, we're still going to be making ICE cars. We have to. There's not a choice. It's not like we can all transition in one day to EVs. We're still going to be making gas cars for at least 5, 6, 7, 10 years. So we'd sure like to be able to put FSD on those gas cars too. And Elon goes, sorry, I don't know. Good.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. I think it's open for debate. My opinion is that Elon would not do that for ICE vehicles. He wants those things off the road tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah,
Now there's a silver lining here. So if Ford just does it for their EVs,
yeah.
the extra money that they earn from that lessens the pain of transitioning to EVs,
Yes.
right? Because Ford right now loses money on every EV they sell.
Right. That's right.
But if they can make some money from FSD, then that helps.
Right.
So there's a bit of a carrot there too, right? The more EVs Ford makes, the more money they can get from FSD potentially. It lessens, I don't know. We'll have to see how this transpires.
I also think, and maybe you'll cover this in the slides, I'm not sure. I think that the licensing of FSD is not a simple thing from an engineering standpoint.
Right.
We're seeing that with the Cybertruck, that Cybertruck still doesn't have FSD. We're seeing it from the standpoint of the semi-trucks. Semi-trucks still don't have FSD. So there is an engineering issue of equipping a vehicle with FSD, which might be much more simply done if they were licensing the entire OI. But even with the entire OI, it must not be simple, or we'd
Right.
already have Cybertrucks. So there's a possibility there where Elon could make his argument. Why are we going to put this on? Why are we going to engineer this on an ICE car, which is on the way out anyway? So anyway, there's a
Yeah.
argument on the other side.
Yeah, as a quick aside, I have FSD on my Cybertruck.
You do.
Yeah, this guy on a Hot Wheels track has no problem driving itself.
It's good. I like it. I like it.
All right.
I wonder if I would sell. I wonder if I would sell more bottle openers if my bottle openers had FSD.
Oh, yes, you would, particularly if they could bring the bottles to you. That would be
Yes,
a
there you go.
innovation.
That's right. That's right.
Not only open them, but bring them to you. Perhaps that's what a robot is for.
Something like that.
Yeah. So here's my 2 cents on this whole thing initially, and this is very simple, and we'll get into some of the details that we just started talking about.
Sure.
So I put myself in the shoes of Ford and Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm Ford, I want my customers to have FSD because it helps me sell more vehicles.
Right.
And it helps my customers see Ford as being relevant in this world.
Yes.
Right? So that's good. What am I willing to pay for it? Okay, so since I'm not developing it myself, I'm going to save billions of dollars. I might be willing to pay some money up front to help Tesla defray the cost, to secure my place in line in case the other automakers come calling and throw money at Tesla. I want to make sure I'm number one.
Sure.
And to be number one, I need to pay some money. I get that. I understand. I try to talk Tesla down and say, listen, man, we need the money. Don't fleece us up front. There's a negotiation there.
Right.
Okay. Or maybe the negotiation is, hey, we also need to buy your hardware. Don't charge us up front. You're going to get plenty of money from us.
Right.
Okay. I definitely want to share in the monthly subscription. I want to keep as much of that as possible. But realistically, I think I know that Tesla probably gets more than 50%. Okay. I don't think I could make a case that I should get more than 50%. They might try. But let's call it 50-50 or 60-40. And I might want to call the software by a name of my choosing.
Yeah.
I just said Ford self-drive, still FSD, it's Ford self-drive. But, maybe not. Maybe Tesla's going to be a stickler for this one. And they say, you know what, we have put our heart and soul into this. You're not going to just take our name and put your name on it and make people think you developed it. No way. But my point on this is they're the price at which no way becomes, okay, right? You pay me enough, I'll
Yeah.
consider changing the name. I don't know what the number is, but there's a number. There is a number, right? Okay, now if I'm Tesla, I know that I can't possibly build enough vehicles to satisfy the world demand.
Right.
And in fact, I don't want to, because the amount of capital and the amount of effort, and Elon has talked about it, they don't have enough executive brain power to deal with all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't. And so it'd be more profitable to sell FSD on other automakers' vehicles, collect that high margin revenue, right? And some people really push back on this comment where I said, if the truth be told, I'd prefer to never make another vehicle again. It's just too capital intensive. I'm speaking from an economic perspective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, Elon said he never intended to become vertical. That was never his plan. It was not, he
Yeah.
didn't, oh boy, I want to become vertical. And I totally understand that. I've wrote the article for Inc. magazine going virtual to vertical years ago because that's what I had done in my plant. I didn't want to be, I wasn't a manufacturer. I didn't know anything about manufacturing. I had
Yeah.
no intention to become vertical, but I went from becoming 100% virtual to 100% vertical because why? Because you can't get the good suppliers because you've got to match up with one supplier is doing with what another supplier is doing. The suppliers are always pointing fingers at each other as to whose fault it is when something goes wrong. All those things were driving me crazy. And eventually, like Elon, I did the same thing.
That's right. And economically speaking, why tie up so much capital on a factory to earn a little bit of return versus less capital on software and earn recurring revenue at high?
Yes. And the opposite example would be Apple, who has used Foxconn
Yeah.
for, all this time and done just perfectly fine. So having phenomenal suppliers is really a better deal than being a manufacturer yourself.
Ideally. Yeah. Now, it just so happens that's an amazing strength of Tesla. And so I'm not suggesting here that they would stop manufacturing vehicles. I think they will. They will continue to manufacture vehicles because they're so good at it, but they don't really want to from an economic standpoint. Okay. I would be asking Ford for big upfront payment. Say, listen, Jim, we have spent billions on developing FSD, years. You don't understand how much money we put into this and the supercomputer that we've built and all this stuff. If you want access to this, you're going to have to pay us some money.
Mm-hmm.
We have sunk so much capital into this business. You can't just waltz in here and expect to start earning subscription revenue. It's going to cost you some money. So Jim might try to, get Elon a few drinks and calm him down. And then the topic of how much subscription revenue do they share, right? I would ask Ford if I'm Tesla, ask Ford for more than 50%. Okay. And then the white label discussion, when Jim tells me that, I'm probably going to laugh. But if he really pushes it, then it's like, okay, I know, there's a price here. This is a minor point. I don't really care whether they white label it or not. I know some people feel that Tesla should not. It should be Tesla's name. To me, it's just a matter of money. Okay. And I feel that at the end of the day, because both parties realize how they can benefit from this,
Mm-hmm.
that they could find a deal. This is not a hard negotiation. They can make it hard if they want to, but if Jim Farley makes it too hard, then Tesla will work with somebody else.
Right.
Okay. Now we don't know who has called him or who he's talked to,
Mm-hmm.
but based on his comment, they will license it to other companies. It leads me to believe they've likely had many different discussions. And he's feeling pretty confident about where those discussions are.
Mm-hmm.
That's speculation on my part. We don't know.
Right.
Now, this could be like the adoption of the North American charging standard. Ford, in that case, was the first one.
Mm-hmm.
14 days later,
Mm-hmm.
GM was next. Now, this is probably a very simple negotiation because Tesla didn't charge these guys anything. Right? They just gave them access to the network and said, hey, we'll give you access. Here's the revenue split.
Mm-hmm.
They believe it. And you can see all these automakers fell in line pretty quickly. It took Stellantis 262 days to
Right.
get there, but they got there. Couple board meetings, couple retreats, couple of consultants were consulted with. They got there. Okay. So I think this is very similar in that if one company does it, a bunch of companies will fall in line. And actually, I've gone as far to say there's some game theory at play here, because if you are late to the party, Tesla may say, you know what, we have to help Ford integrate this into their vehicles.
Mhm.
It's not just a matter of putting cameras on the vehicles and plugging FSD in and having it work. We've got some engineering to do here.
Yep.
Because Cybertruck doesn't yet run with FSD, even though mine does. Right. And if Tesla hasn't figured it out for Cybertruck yet, then there must be some challenges to that.
Mhm.
So if you're too late to this party, if you're Stellantis again and you're the last one, then Tesla's going to say, sorry, buddy, it's going to take us 10 years to get to you. You've come to this party too late. You need to work with us early. And so these companies, I think, need to start thinking about their future here.
There could even be chips issues.
That too. Right. Issues with the hardware and securing enough, yeah, all kinds of stuff.
Right.
So when we get to the discussion about who, this is a great chart by Zil, if that's how you say his name, XIL on X.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
And this shows 21, 22, and 23 worldwide battery electric vehicle unit sales.
Mhm.
If you focus just on the right side of the chart, it shows 2023.
Mhm.
Tesla sold close to 2 million. If you add up all the other companies, it's about 7.5 million EVs.
Right.
This is the potential market opportunity. If all those vehicles were sold with FSD attached, and I'll show you an example here with the math, Tesla could basically double its profit in 1 year. Now, those companies produce another 7.5 million or more next year. And so there's another 10, 11 billion of profit that come to Tesla if all the vehicles had FSD installed and
Oh,
all the
yeah.
customers paid for FSD every month. Now they're not. That's a
Right.
crazy assumption, but just showing what the potential is here, it's enormous. But if we spend a little time perhaps and think about who is likely to partner with Tesla, I think that's an interesting discussion. Most people think that Ford is first because Ford was first with the North American charging standard. Jim Farley seems to have a good relationship with Elon. They are a likely candidate, more likely, in my opinion, than GM.
Mhm.
Maybe Rivian first. Could be.
Mhm.
Lucid, who cares? In Europe, who's the most likely European company? Well, who's selling the most EVs? Volkswagen. With the prior leader, Elon had a good relationship with him. He's not there anymore.
Yeah.
How's this relationship with Volkswagen today? I don't know. But Volkswagen and BMW to me would be the two leading ideal candidates to partner with as European automakers. Mercedes wouldn't be bad. Stellantis would be okay.
Yeah, you've got so many, as you mentioned, there's so many ways of thinking about what these companies do or don't do. You've got Mercedes that considers themselves to be a leader in automated driving. So they might be jealous of the idea of bringing Tesla on. At the same point, maybe they're recognizing that going from level 2.5 or whatever they are right now to level 5 is not going to be something they can even do. So they would want to still be in that leadership position. There's so many. I look at BYD. We know that Elon has a great relationship with him. They even do business together already. So BYD would be a big loser if Tesla is all alone with FSD in the China market. Although I guess there are a few companies there that have fairly advanced systems that can operate, at least in some areas. So, but BYD is not on the chart. They're not even, they don't seem to even be actively trying to get there.
Yeah. So that's if we shift to China, that's a logical partnership in my mind, potential. The challenge that you have with companies that are doing this themselves right now is they too have sunk potentially billions of dollars into this
Yes.
development.
Yes.
And it takes a very bold CEO to admit the mistake and say, you know what, we're going to scrap this and we're going to go with Tesla.
And I've always felt like Hyundai Kia would be, which I consider to be the same company. I've always considered them as potentially being the third or fourth biggest BEV maker when all is said and done. South Koreans just smart folks, and they just seem to really get it done. And they're already, I guess, the fourth or fifth largest maker in the world when you count them together of vehicles. So again, I would see, I don't hear anything from them in terms of FSD. So they would be another, I think, high potential for making a deal.
Agreed. They would be high on my list as well. Yeah. So there's a number of intriguing possibilities here, I think. And as you can see, the BEV sales have grown every year. So
Right.
it's 7.5 million in 2023. This year it might be 8 or 8.5 million collectively. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the opportunity continues to grow. So this account said, you know, we should some math on this. What's your calculation of potential FSD licensing revenue? So for me, that's like feeding like, you know, red meat to a guy with a spreadsheet,
Right.
right? And this is in response to Elon's response to Whole Mars saying FSD licensing earnings will exceed Tesla's auto business earnings.
Yeah.
And Elon said, good chance that turns out to be true.
Yeah.
So I said, let me put some thought to this. And so here's what I came up with. This is really rough. It's not well thought out. I haven't had a whole lot of time to think about it. How big could FSD licensing revenue become? With 7.5 million EVs and growing sold each year that aren't Teslas, if the subscription price is 200 a month and the revenue split is 60-40, then Tesla's earning 1440 a year per vehicle. Okay. And 7.5 million EVs, that's 10.8 billion in annual revenue / profit. And I think this would be such high margin revenue that revenue is almost profit.
Right.
Taking a bit of a shortcut there, maybe it's 9 billion in profit, whatever. But just to put that in perspective, Tesla's earnings last year was about 10.8 billion.
Right.
Now, this assumes that every EV sold has a customer buying, you know, subscribing to FSD. That would not be the case. And I'm not suggesting it's the case. I'm just trying to frame up the opportunity. But it's also worth mentioning this is 10.8 billion this year and 10.8 billion next year, plus next year's vehicles sales of another 7.5, 8 or 8.5 million
Right.
at another 10, 11, 12 billion.
Right.
So you just keep layering on the potential. Now, again, it's not 10 billion a year, it's less than that. This also excludes the value of any hardware sales.
Yes.
Or anything else.
Setup sales.
Yeah, setup and all that stuff. Okay. And here's the chart. You know, I wouldn't be Cern Basher if I didn't come with a chart.
Of course.
Okay, so in this chart, I assume that EVs are growing at 15% a year in terms of that 7.5 million. Okay, so by 2040, I get to 74 million EVs produced. Could be high, could be low. I'm assuming that it takes until 2026 before any of these other OEMs actually sell cars with FSD capable, you know, suites.
It makes sense.
Okay. And I'm assuming in that year, 7% of their customers subscribe to FSD. And then I'm growing that at 2% a year. So 7, 9, 11, 13, et cetera.
I see.
Okay. I'm assuming FSD is $200 a month. I'm assuming Tesla takes 60%. And that gets me to about 35, 37 billion by 2040.
I see. Okay.
Of revenue / profit.
Right.
Now, how long does it take to get to where earnings are more than what Tesla's earned last year? Well, that's about 2034. 10 years.
I got it. Okay.
Now, this is EVs only. This is not
Right.
hybrids.
Right.
This is not internal combustion engine vehicles. If that's the case, then this number is totally different.
Yes, and
If
you're also not figuring for higher revenues off of robotaxis.
not even this is just licensing FSD at $200 a month.
Right.
And we will be in a robotaxi world at some point along this curve.
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, this analysis is, yeah, it's just the FSD licensing, just the software, EVs only. You add hybrids, you can probably double these numbers. So I can see why Elon said what he said in terms of the earnings being higher than the auto business.
Right. And your expectation, you're starting at around 7% adoption and adding 2% a year. I think that's really low. Then your expectation is going to take until 2040, I mean, until, 2040 to get us to virtual 100% BEVs. That's about 12 years later than I think it's going to happen. And maybe it's in between, obviously between, but I don't think it'll take that long. So your revenue numbers are very conservative. I think that's what I'm pointing out. This is a very conservative analysis of what could happen. I have proposed over and over again that the $200 a month, the subscription fee needs to be somehow done differently.
Mhm.
$200 across the board makes no sense. So it should either be by the mile or grouped together in mileage groupings under 10,000 a month, 10 to 20,000 a month, whatever, get different charges. And then people that are using it commercially, like for instance, for robotaxis or even for commercial application where they're driving at 20, 30,000 miles, they need to pay more.
Yeah.
But the $200 a month average actually appeals to me.
Yep. No, there's so many different ways this can go. I agree with you about all those points. Um, Particularly in a robotaxi world.
Yeah,
I think if you're using FSD commercially, I think there's a different price.
right.
If you're using it personally, I think Tesla has an interest in just producing the safest vehicles they can and producing that at the lowest cost they can so that everybody gets to be safe and we save lives.
Oh,
To
yeah.
me, that's
Oh, yeah.
important.
You don't have semi trucks on here.
No.
Which is probably a much more likely license in the short term.
Yeah.
I could see the what do you call it, the semi truck producers, and I would see Elon potentially being okay with putting FSD on the gas or the diesel semis because of the safety issue
Maybe in that case, maybe that would be an exception
and
or for a period of
the
time.
huge commercial advantage.
Yeah. For a period of time or, yeah,
Yeah,
there may be some sort of mandates in terms of,
sure.
you need to produce this many EVs by certain timeframes. And if you do that, if you stay on that track, then we'll supply FSD to you. If not, if you're just going to be a diesel truck maker for the rest of your life, then we're not interested in participating.
Right.
So all kinds of things they could do there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the bottom line is this is a very interesting business opportunity.
Very.
And initially, if you think about it, if you are a car company that makes a premium car and you don't have full self-driving capability, then what do you have?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Now,
Well,
maybe people are buying Ferraris for them to self-drive, and that's a very niche market. So I wouldn't think Ferrari would be a customer here necessarily, but Mercedes and, all kinds of other vehicle brands out there, BMWs.
I think we have to, not in 5 years and not in 10 years, but there's going to become a point at which driving a car will seem ridiculous because they'll not only be primarily full self-driving on the streets and highways, but they will be they probably they'll be linked together. They will be talking to one another. They'll be Bluetoothed, I guess, or somehow through Starlink or one way or the other. They will be speaking to one another. They'll be speaking to traffic lights. The entire thing will be one huge machine.
Well, we've already seen that people don't want to drive. That they're already on their phones. They're telling us they don't want to drive. So, right, for all the people out there that say, "Oh, I don't want FSD," it's like, well, most of the people disagree with you. They're already on their phones.
Yeah, I kind of like driving. Always have liked driving. It's kind of fun. It's kind of sport.
Hmm.
But I can also definitely see where having that time to do something else would be lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most people would opt for that. So shifting gears,
So to
unless
speak.
unless there's anything else you want to discuss on this FSD licensing
Oh, it's good.
situation. Every quarter when the delivery report comes out, I put together a little summary of, is Tesla having an impact? And the answer is you betcha. Okay. We'll come back to that chart in a second. But since 2012, with 5.8 million Teslas on the road, I calculate that it's about 2.5 billion fewer gallons of gasoline consumed every year.
Okay.
And that's also 22 million metric tons less of carbon emissions, not 22 metric tons, but million metric tons.
Okay.
Less noise, less brake dust. The list goes on.
Uh-huh.
That's $8.1 billion not spent on gasoline, right? Some of it's spent on electricity, sure. It's not totally saved. It's if the average gas station sells 1.5 million gallons of fuel, then we need 1,667 fewer gas stations.
Wow.
Okay. That's 5.8 million people plus their families that don't have to stop at those dirty gas stations.
Right.
I'm not missing
Which
that.
is my wife's favorite thing about her Tesla.
Yep. Yeah. My favorite thing is the car is full every day when I get into it.
Right. Right.
And 5.8 million people who resolve recalls by just getting a software update.
Yep.
That's nice. I don't miss going to car dealerships. I don't have any
Oh,
desire to go visit a
no.
car dealership again. They have destroyed that customer experience for me over the years. I have no desire of ever stepping foot into one of those places again.
Well, you didn't mention on the same note, 5.8 million people that didn't have to go through the sales experience at a car
Uh,
dealership.
yeah. And over the years, they tried to change their ways, but man, they're still the same people. They're still old habits die hard.
Yes.
Now, I made some assumptions here. These are rough numbers. Don't criticize me too much for the miles driven and the miles per gallon
Sure,
and the
sure, sure.
fuel. These are all rough numbers. I've had people, just
Nitpick away. Yeah.
nitpick away. And I also recognize that not all these Teslas that have been sold are in operation today. There have been a few Honda bumps over the years.
Yeah.
And a shout out to Wham Bam Tesla Cam. Some great videos of Hondas bumping Teslas and knocking them out of the fleet. And also Sandy Monroe, he's also taken a few out. He's torn down a few of them. So I blame him for reducing the fleet size. But thank you, Sandy, for your work. It's amazing what you've done and the information you've shared.
Absolutely.
And my final disclaimer here is this is not an exhaustive list. There's all kinds of other benefits, but this is just a few quick ones. And this is how it looks over time. The green line is the amount of money saved, 8.1 billion, and gallons of gas, 2.5 billion annualized gallons of gasoline not consumed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow.
if you want to talk about advancing towards the mission on even a quarter that was kind of weak,
Mm-hmm.
they're advancing towards the mission.
That's a good chart. Like that chart.
Yeah. And that brings us to the thrilling conclusion of this
particular
discussion.
particular time around the chart world.
Yes.
Well, you might have missed your calling. Maybe you should have been a professor or teacher or something because you're so good at making these slideshows.
Thank you for the idea, but I think I'll pass on that. That opportunity has come and gone.
When I
Yeah.
when I sold my manufacturing business, I do have, of course, an advanced degree and I've written a bunch of books. So I thought, I should probably look into the possibility of becoming a professor, maybe just an adjunct, just doing it part-time or whatever. And then I remembered grading papers. And I thought, no, I can't.
Well, That's easy today because the students just use AI to write the papers,
That's right. Yeah. So
and you could just use AI to grade them. Yeah. No, I think that professors and teachers have to come up with whole new mechanisms of grading their students.
yeah.
Gone are the days where they can have them write papers.
Or back to blue books. You have to handwrite your paper. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. 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 Remembering the days. Well,
Hmm.
fascinating as usual and useful. Actually useful this time. No, I'm kidding.
Once in a while, Randy.
Once in a while, they're useful. Yeah, I think all of them are useful because most of the folks that are listening to this show, of course, are invested in Tesla, and probably most of those people are not all in. So they have other investments as well, other stock investments, other investments in other kinds of investment vehicles. And if any of those people want to talk to you ever, should they give you a call? Is this something, you know?
They're welcome to. Yeah, they can find us at brilliantadvice.net. We're in the process of revamping our website a little bit. We haven't focused on that at all. So that's a pretty old website at this point, but they can reach out to us from there. There's a contact us page.
All right, great. Well, I sincerely, of course, appreciate you coming on each week and helping us understand some of these things just a little bit better in a way that is visually interesting, and therefore maybe we have a better chance of retaining it.
Yes, and that's the big distinction between Scott and I.
I thought the big distinction was definitely the hairdo, but I could have been wrong.
There's that from a visual perspective, but because I bring charts, folks are more likely to remember what I said versus anything that Scott says. No, Scott is great. Scott is very informative. He is the second best guy in Sarasota, though, I would say.
There you go. All right. So, that seems to be, that's one opinion, as Scott would probably say. All right. Thanks again for being on board. And to all of you out there, as usual, it has been great talking to you.
Thanks, Randy.